Okay, so one of the top questions we got asked as we were building this conference was, will there be cannabis companies there? Will there be crypto companies there? And our answer was no, it's a mining conference. You'll find resource companies, metal companies, energy companies. But we were asked every single day leading up to this event, will you be including cannabis? Will you be including crypto? And so we decided to organize this discussion this morning, and I'm really excited because we've got, I think, the best minds in this business. We have veteran newsletter writers and one of the best value investors that I know. And so we're going to talk today about cannabis versus gold versus crypto. Where is the return? Where is the risk? And our moderator today is James Black, the director of the CSE. And in terms of having a beat on which companies are listing, new listings, which companies are financing, James has an excellent idea. So I'd like to welcome James to the stage and his panelists. Please give them a welcome round of applause. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Jay. Pleasure to be here as always at Cambridge House. Come on up, guys. We've got Chris Perry, we've got Jason Hamlin, and we've got David Morgan, who I assume you all know. But for posterity's sake, because we're recording this and future generations will need to know, can everyone on the panel introduce yourselves and maybe describe to the audience what exactly it is your investment philosophy is and how it relates to the three assets we've set the table with today: crypto, cannabis, and gold.
I'm Chris Parry from Equity.Guru. I was a reporter at the Vancouver Sun for 5 years, sitting behind David Baines, watching him side through the underground of the Vancouver financing scene. I created Equity.Guru to be the balance between the Baines avenging sword and the stock promoters. My investment philosophy is, I'm a Moneyball guy. If you've ever read that book, I like to look for the things that the market's missed, that the market will eventually catch up on. We got ahead of cannabis back in 2014. We got ahead of blockchain before that thing blew up. And currently, energy metals, oil and gas, anything that I think there's a good month or so before it falls over.
Cool. Jason?
My name is Jason Hamlin. I write Gold Stock Bull investment newsletter. Prior to that, I was in data analytics with the world's largest market research firm. My investment philosophy is really that of a contrarian viewpoint, so these three sectors were right up my alley. I like precious metals, obviously for the store of value, and being non-correlated to traditional investment sectors in the everything bubble that the Fed has pumped up. I think there's a lot of growth in the cannabis sector, a lot more than people realize. As illegal sales come into the fold and become legal, there are new product launches coming out that are going to bring more people in and increase usage, as well as I think we underestimate the medicinal component of CBD oils. You know, it was medicine for a long time in the early 19th century. Bayer produced CBD oil, and you'd go to the pharmacy for all kinds of ailments, and that's what they'd give you. And I think we've forgotten that over the last 100 years, and so the potential sales there are a lot larger than people are estimating. And I've been a crypto bull for a long time. I first bought into Bitcoin under $100, saw the potential in it, and continue to be very bullish on where crypto prices are headed. All three of these assets are really contrarian assets, are non-correlated with traditional market bubble sectors right now, and so I remain bullish on all three.
Excellent. David?
David Morgan, themorganreport.com. I take a contrarian view. My mission statement is to teach and empower people the benefits of an honest financial system. So I've been pro-honest currency for a very long time. On the crypto space, if you want to get my feeling on it, look at an article I wrote in the public domain over 4 years ago. It's called My 2 Bits About Bitcoin. My personal philosophy on it we'll get to later in this panel, but basically I said I'm pro-competing currencies, and who am I to say that Bitcoin is good or bad? Let the market decide. If I'm a true free market person, then that's the philosophy I should adhere to. On the marijuana side, I also wrote an article jokingly, but pays attention because I very seldom write in the public domain anymore. Almost all my effort is directed to my paid subscribers, but occasionally I do. I do a lot of interviews and videos for free, but not too much in the written format. But I jokingly wrote, but it was a heads up, all the miners have gone to pot. And that I think was the first summer show that I wasn't invited to here at Cambridge, and the whole thesis was marijuana stocks. So it was kind of a big wink and a nod to everybody. Again, I'm free market. You do it as you wish. But to add to Jason, I'm very, I guess I'm going to date myself, hip to hemp. I think the hemp thing is huge. I do like the hemp oil. I use it. I've got some arthritis, and it seems to help. As far as the get high thing, it's up to you, not to me. That's totally your domain, not mine. Personally, I like to fly straight and narrow. But I think that's enough said on me, so thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, wonderful. So maybe for context, because I like audience participation, who here holds cryptos right now in their portfolio? We've got a few. What about gold? Any gold bugs in the crowd? Or just people, lots?
Same guys.
Yeah, same guys. We'll talk about that. And cannabis. Anybody hold cannabis stocks? All right. I'll start with Jason. I've got a question for you. You are a fan of all three assets, but let's start with cryptocurrencies. With over 1,700 flavors to choose from, should investors stick to the big names like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and Litecoin, or be on the lookout for newer opportunities via initial coin offerings, ICOs?
Yeah, I think it's just like investing in the equity markets. You want to have a diversified portfolio, a basket of different things. I hold about half of my crypto assets are in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and about half are in altcoins. I have 15 or 20 different altcoins. I think they have the potential to outperform, Bitcoin and Ethereum, but you have to be really selective with which ones you're choosing. So we do an ICO tracker, and we analyze all of the new coins that are coming out on multiple criteria and assign a score to them, and then go through and kind of look at the team, look at what the MVP they put out, and really dig down into every one of these blockchain companies. Do they have a real world use case? And how far along are they on the process? So I think you want to hold a diversified basket of multiple cryptocurrencies. And there's some really exciting projects doing things that are disrupting multi-billion-dollar industries by making them more efficient, cutting out the middlemen, decentralizing processes. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what's going to be happening in this sector over the next 5 to 10 years.
Understood. David, you sort of answered the next question I had laid out, but it's the concept of crypto as being analogous to gold and silver as a store of value. Do you see it that way, or is crypto for you pure speculation at this point based on no fundamentals whatsoever?
Well, the same way I treat the stock market, it's an individual case-by-case basis. So my philosophy doesn't adhere to a lot of the cryptos that are out there that are basically fiat in disguise, meaning they're really backed by nothing. But however, if you've got a blockchain methodology that is backed by, let's say, tea as an example, one that came from China, or silver, or lumber, or perhaps an idea, which gets into kind of the gray area. I think that's well and good. They can, if it's tangible and it's trackable, everything that the distributed ledger technology provides. So I'm all for that. On the ones that basically are there to just part your money from you and go into the pockets of the promoters, I'm not for those. I look at similar to what happened in the .com boom.
Yeah.
Amazon, if you stuck with Amazon at the beginning and held all the way through, you've done extremely well. Yahoo, the same thing. But how many pets.com and so-and-so.com came up and blew up? So you have to be very selective, as Jason said. By the way, just a shameless plug, we have covered this space since about the last 6-8 months. David Smith, that works for me, has been much more aggressive in the crypto space than myself. But we cover it from a top view down, not from a specific buy this one. So if you want to just basically stay out of trouble, you might consider that. It's not the main part of our letter, but we don't want to miss it because we do think deeply and carefully and try to do our best to help you.
Wonderful. Chris, your opinion, is this a store of value, or is it speculation, or somewhere in between?
Yes.
Good answer.
Look,
yeah.
my problem with the crypto world isn't the crypto world per se. It's how you engage in it. For me, the big thing that could bring it all down in a hurry is the exchange world. Some of the exchanges that are out there are not particularly put together as well as others. I've had personal experiences getting no trouble at all putting money into an account in a local exchange, but having just the world's worst time trying to get the money back. If there's any sort of a run on some of the exchanges, you really wonder what's going to happen if people just have to walk away from their investment completely. It certainly happened before. If you put your money in a bank and there's a run on the bank, it's insured. If you put your money in an exchange run by 4 guys who listen to hardcore punk in Latvia, you might have a bit more trouble getting that profit back. Crypto certainly is worthwhile as a gamble, and it's certainly worthwhile as a currency. But there's connective tissue between the financial world and the crypto world that hasn't yet been established. And that may be where the potential is, rather than buying individual currencies for me.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to start to see mainstream exchanges like the CSE become players in the space potentially by offering things like security token offerings and security token trading on a regulated market, which, for better or worse, is I think where things have to go. But yeah, that's something we're seeing. And I was going to ask this question later, but maybe Jason, you can just tell the audience, where would you buy your crypto from? How would you go and actually into the market and buy Bitcoin or one of these newer ICOs?
Sure. Well, just quickly to comment on the exchange thing. Up until this point, it's been centralized exchanges, and this year is really the year that decentralized exchanges are coming into the mainstream. So Kyber Network is one of them. You can buy their coin. 0x has a decentralized exchange protocol. And basically, it's all happening within a smart contract. You say what you want to put in, what you want to get out, and it happens without your tokens ever being in the possession of the exchange. So you eliminate the third-party risk in that situation. And then, sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Oh, just where would you buy?
Oh, so in the US, it's Coinbase, and I think you can use it here as well.
Yep.
Gemini is also a good one. It's run by the Winklevoss twins who, helped start Facebook and had the whole lawsuit with Zuckerberg. Square has an app where their Cash app you can buy directly on, and that just launched this year, and the fees are a bit lower than Coinbase. If you do buy on Coinbase, you want to buy on GDAX, on their trading platform, and not on Coinbase, and then you don't pay fees. You put in a limit order, and there's 0 fees. If you buy on Coinbase itself, you pay a fee of, I think it's 1.5%. So make sure you're buying on GDAX and not Coinbase. And then here in Canada, just in my hotel room last night, it was funny because it's the first really cryptocurrency commercial I've seen on a major network, and it was for a company called CoinSquare.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess it seems like a good place to buy crypto as well. I haven't used it, but if they're running commercials and have money, I'm sure they're well funded. And from what I can tell reading online, that's another place. The ICO market was huge last year for us. I mean, everything we put money into in the ICO market last year, it tripled or quadrupled in a couple months after getting listed on the exchanges. It was really easy to do. The regulators hadn't come in yet. You didn't have to whitelist. There were no requirements for being accredited. They didn't check where you were coming from. It was true free markets and it rivaled venture capital. It was amazing. It's an amazing innovation of this whole space. This year, I think, the easy opportunities, the low-hanging fruit, it's gone. It's a lot more difficult to invest in the ICO market. So this year, I'm more likely just to wait for a token to hit an exchange, see what the price does, track their progress against their roadmap, and then make a decision on whether or not to buy. So I'm not as hot on the ICO market now as I was last year.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to transition to cannabis for a minute because we're going to try to cover all three in this discussion. Chris, I've tabbed you as the cannabis guy today, so hopefully you're okay with that. So we've seen sort of the commoditization, I guess, of cannabis, and we've seen this rapid organization of a multi-billion-dollar marketplace for regulated cannabis in Canada. From your perspective, where do you see returns being generated from the sector in 2018?
So it's kind of funny being the cannabis guy up here, because in January at the last Cambridge House show, I stood up and told the room, sell everything you have that's cannabis-based. Yeah. Figure out what it's like to be rich for a while and watch everyone else bag hold all the way down. And 3 days later, everything crashed and is only just sort of leveled off now. What I think of the cannabis space is that I'd almost rather be in barley and hops if I'm farming.
Okay.
I'd rather be growing saffron out of a big warehouse in Edmonton rather than weed, because what other industry, you're essentially in agriculture and you're told that you can't sell unless somebody finds you on the internet without you marketing to them. And now you have to sell everything to the government at a certain price, which is going to be low. Growing weed is a terrible business, and I've really been saying that since 2015. It's the thin edge of the wedge, it's the easy way in, but eventually we'll be growing fields of the stuff in Ethiopia and Kenya, and it'll be sent here to compete with our luscious pharmaceutical grade stuff. To me, the real opportunity isn't in weed growing, it's in weed products. When you take the dried flower, you're really dealing with a small market of people who want to engage with smoking. The next level up is people who will, I brought a prop here with me. This is a product that if I had this in my pocket, no one would think that I was taking any sort of form of marijuana. This looks like a cigarette. It's done, right? So I'm not a smoker, but I can do this in polite company, and people will not walk out of the room. The smell's gone, it's dissipated. But this isn't the thing. The thing is this bit at the end here, the oil, which eventually will perfect turning that into powder, which eventually we'll be putting into sandwiches, in bread, in orange juice, in tea, in capsules. The reason I even have this is because before I go to bed, I do exactly what I just did. I sleep like an angel. I don't pop a drug test the next day. I don't get high. And the next morning, my mind is focused because this thing just does the thing that it's supposed to do. But it's not about getting high. This is about me as somebody who has a little ADHD wanting to be able to focus in the morning. I want that in a pill. I want that in a tea. I don't want to smoke it. I don't want to have to carry around this apparatus. So to me, as we move forward, the weed industry won't be the weed industry anymore. It'll be the beverage industry. It'll be the alcohol industry. It'll be the pharmaceutical industry. We won't talk about marijuana any more than we talk about lanolin when we're talking about vitamin D. It's just going to be a product that is in there. So the companies that are just tuned to grow 1 million square feet of stuff that's going to be the first ingredient in a multi-chain value-add product, they're going to be the guys growing coffee and selling it to Starbucks, not the guy owning the Starbucks restaurant, cafe and making the money at the other end. So this is, anyone who's worried about getting into the cannabis space because it's drugs is not looking at the right place. This is just a nutraceutical at this point. This is going to be in everything that you guys consume, whether you know it or not. So for me, investing-wise, I want the guys that are creating the brands at that far end, that are doing the deals with Shoppers Drug Mart, that have the guys on hand that have experience in the beverage sector and that know how to get products on shelves.
No, fair. I think that's a great long-term outlook. Short-term, do you see, and Jason, you can chime in, or even yourself, David, but you mentioned you wrote an article about it yesterday about MedReleaf being taken out by Aurora. I'm sure MedReleaf shareholders were kind of happy with the premium they were paid for that acquisition, but short-term, are we looking at here in the crowd people needing to buy the acquirers or the acquirees?
So let's be honest. If you're in charge of MedReleaf, which is a big LP and doing all the right things and in the top 6, and you suddenly one day go out and say, does anyone want to buy us? That only makes sense if you think you're at the most valuation you're ever going to get.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be too hard to do the things that are going to get you beyond that, right? MedReleaf tapped out. They've done all the things to get where they need to go, but they looked around and thought, we can't raise $100 million to get to the next level. The market's not justifying it. We've got a valuation that's been dropping. This is as good as it's ever going to get. Who's going to buy us out? Well, Aurora has the track record of we'll buy anything for anything. They have growth by purchase power rather than by actually selling marijuana and developing products. So to me, that's a sign that if the guys that run MedReleaf think the market for their deal is as good as it's going to get, at least in the short term, then that's probably a sign for everybody else that there's a little bit of misery to come.
Okay.
I would just add that I agree a lot of the value is going to be in these value-added processed products and the oils and the edibles and the drinks and stuff like that into the future. That'll be a huge growth segment. But I do think it's a high-margin business, and I do think the growth is there. So I am bullish on a lot of these growers. And a lot of the big names also have retail outlets. They're also processing the oil and doing other things. So they're not growing the flower alone. But even growing the flower, it can be a really high-tech process. I mean, they have it dialed in with these greenhouses. They have all of the latest technology to control every atmospheric and environmental level within there to optimize the amount that they can grow. I tracked this company in Colorado that was doing just agriculture, fruits and vegetables, and growing that for the longest time. They bought up farmland, they had water resources, built greenhouses, and then leased the greenhouses out to growers, so there'd be a little separation, I think, for legal purposes. But in talks with the CEO, the profit margins in switching from, growing food, produce, to growing cannabis was huge. And growing in a greenhouse, they got nearly double the yield at half the cost versus growing in warehouses, which is where most people were growing up until that point. So I think there's a lot of growth left. I think this is a good buying opportunity on the correction in cannabis stocks over the last month or two. And I think people are underestimating just how much growth there will be in the market from these new segments, from globalizing the legalization movement sweeping the globe, essentially.
So maybe don't go all in on the farming side, but maybe look at the branding and ancillary side as the uptick.
There's a lot to be said for farming for your own uses, right? So Green Organic Dutchman, Tea God, they're growing their own stuff, but they won't sell it to anybody.
Yeah.
They don't need patience. What they're looking to do is to develop products using their own consistent produce that will eventually be worth a lot more. So a lot of companies like Supreme, as an example, really don't care about selling to you guys. They're just going to grow it and vault it, because what they're looking at is down the line it'll be worth a lot more money than they can possibly get in revenues right now just by selling flower.
Gotcha. I'm going to transition to David for a moment, because we've been talking a little bit here about cannabis and cryptos, but what role do precious metals such as gold play for the short-term investors, so thinking in the next 12 months? With all of the hype in blockchain, cryptos, and cannabis, what words of caution do you have for investors that aren't positioning themselves in commodities? And by commodity, I specifically mean gold and silver, even if they have short-term investment mandates. So really, everyone here, if they're so excited about crypto and blockchain and cannabis, is there a chance that they might neglect gold and silver to their detriment in their portfolio? What words of wisdom do you have in that respect?
First of all, when I started the Morgan Report, my foundational premise was that you need to have a hedge position due to the currency crisis. And that's kind of ongoing. So I've always recommended like a 20% position total. So there's 80% that you can put into cryptos, cannabis, real estate, or whatever. So that's point number one. Point number two is the Gold and Silver Summit that Jay sponsored down in San Francisco last year. One of the ending panels was myself, Adrian Day, Doug Casey, and there was another gentleman or two, I respectfully forget who. But the last question we were asked, if you had to go out in a 10-year time frame, would you own Bitcoin or gold? Mm-hmm. I thought that was a very interesting question. To a man, everyone said gold. So I think that's the long-term perspective. Again, it's a hedge. It's not bet everything in the resource sector. Again, personally, my views, I think, matter little. It's your views. Obviously, there's a lot to be said. I think the cannabis discussion was very intriguing. There's so much availability, what that plant can perform for the human being. It's amazing. So I'll stop there. I think I answered the question.
Just real quick, there are a couple stats I wanted to add on to the growth story for cannabis. In the U.S., cannabis sales eclipsed ice cream sales last year, if you can imagine. In Canada, they're rivaling wine sales right now, and eventually, I think, in both markets, cannabis sales will eclipse alcohol sales, just to put a little perspective onto the size of the market and the growth trajectory ahead.
Right on, okay. So again, we've kind of covered sort of the short-term viewpoint of this marketplace. I'm going to just, to your point, David, look a little further ahead, let's say 5 years. Chris, just to jump on one of your points, and this is something I want to know, is if you were to buy all of the brand name, big name LPs in Canada right now that are at the top of the venture index, would you be regretting that decision if you bought all 5 of those today, or would you be happy you made that decision 5 years from now?
Well, I'll answer that by asking if 5 years ago if you would have sunk all your money into oil and gas stocks.
I'm sure some people did.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the market changes a lot every year, let alone 5 years.
Yeah.
The LPs that survive are going to be those that understand how to diversify, that maybe having 1 million square feet of marijuana growing is great because you can use it for X, Y, Z. Not all LPs think that way. Some are very much more focused on the end, and some are very much more focused on the beginning. There's going to be a whole lot of acquisitions going, and it's impossible to predict who's going to be acquired. No one would have thought New Strike would have been acquired by Canamed back in when it was being attacked by Aurora. It was a nothing, and really still is, but has a massive valuation because someone went after it. The market forces that are played right now in marijuana don't make any real sense in terms of what you see in revenue.
Gotcha.
How will that play out in the next 2 or 3 years? There's going to be players that don't exist yet that will come along and will take over from a lot of the guys that currently do. I'd be really cautious about putting my money into things that dropped 30-40% since January,
Right.
and having a 5-year outlook on them.
Yeah, which I guess is sort of the case for gold and silver, which I don't think I've seen those upticks and downticks so much. What about foreign? You mentioned it real quickly, foreign growers. When you think about California and other U.S. states that, well, specifically California and its size and access to market, would investors be smart to start looking at U.S. growers as an investment opportunity?
So if the U.S. government decides tomorrow or in the 2020 or wherever that it's time to take marijuana off the drug schedule, what's happened in Canada is a distant memory.
Yeah.
And all of the companies that are going to be engaging in that are going to be new companies. They're going to be companies down there, not companies up here.
Yep.
We have the advantage in time. We have had the advantage to actually set things up. So for countries like Australia and places like Europe, it's much easier for them to come to us and say, you guys have sorted this out, can you supply us with what we need, rather than build an entire industry from scratch.
Yep.
But for the USA, that's going to be a different thing. They're going to go at it with billions of dollars and go real quick, and it'll be Fortune 500 companies getting engaged.
Yep.
It's going to put 2014, 2015 in the shade.
Yeah, and we just saw Canopy announce their intent to list on ISE. So you can see the markets are starting to adopt that as well.
If I can just add real quick to that, it's ridiculous that it's still Schedule 1 in the United States. I mean, that's equivalent to heroin or cocaine or speed or something like that. It means it has zero medicinal benefit, and it's just a ridiculous notion. But I think the writing's on the wall. We're already seeing some senators propose legislation to remove cannabis from Schedule 1. So if that happens in the U.S., it's going to be a big boon for the sector, and I think that's coming eventually. Certainly public support has reached a level where there's pressure on politicians to remove it.
Yeah, and hemp is already well on its way, I assume. Yeah. Jason, we're going to go rapid fire here because we have about 4 minutes. Will we have more cryptocurrencies in 5 years from now? Or will we see standardization with crypto? Will Bitcoin continue to be the most popular cryptocurrency? Or could it possibly fail by the wayside in favor of a different currency?
Yeah, there's certainly going to be more. There's more coming out all the time. Whether or not they have any value or people willing to pay anything for them is a different story. Most of the new ones are utility tokens, specific niches and industries, and they work for that company, not really in competition with Bitcoin in terms of being money. I think Bitcoin will probably continue to lose market share over time, but it will probably continue to be at the top spot. It has brand recognition, first mover advantage. It has the security and the greatest hash power of any crypto out there. There's legislation regulations are actually a lot more friendly than we were expecting it to be. So I think the cryptocurrency market's going to continue to do well, especially if we start to see institutional money come into it, which I expect to happen this year.
Definitely. And David, will trust in fiat currencies continue to erode, and will this push gold to new highs in the next 5 years? And we could also ask this about crypto, but let's say gold specifically.
I believe it will. Most markets that are secular markets have three main phases up and two down. We've experienced 2 phases up and 2 down, so we're getting ready to launch into the last phase, phase 3, if you're an Elliott wave type. And I think your run to gold, there's an adage there's no fever like gold fever, and there's certainly been a lot of fever around the cryptos and around the cannabis sector, but there's a reason that gold's lasted for 5,000 years. And the currency crisis that's unfolding now, I think, will accelerate at some point within the next 5 years. And at that point, I think with the worldwide technology we all enjoy with the internet, it won't be a U.S. phenomena only that took gold from roughly the $300 level all the way up to $850 in a matter of 5 months. I think you'll see an acceleration like that in gold and silver again during the next 5 years, and I think it will put the 1980s bull market to shame. In other words, I think it'll be far, far greater than what we experienced last time around.
Gotcha. And anything happening, this is for the entire panel, last question, actually second last question, I'll ask David one more. How should people buy gold today?
I've always advocated physical first, and after that you get the best risk-to-reward profile by buying top-tier mining companies that are unhedged. And then, of course, the junior producers or mid-tier producers, and then of course every one of us loves to speculate, but you have to be very careful in that space. So I always teach bet a little to win a lot, and as the company progresses, you can add to that investment.
Okay. With respect to all three assets, if you can name one big event that could impact your asset this year, what would it be? This could be socioeconomic, political, or technological. Chris, you're the pot guy.
I'm so not. The one big event would be the US opening up. I think that will be that's a good reason to keep your powder dry.
Yeah.
Canadian companies that have US exposure, I'm very interested in because they're going to be the first cabs off the rank.
Yeah.
But the big players in weed will be the big players in alcohol right now, the big players in pharma, the big players in, your Monster energy drinks will have a weed version at some point. So I'm a keep your powder dry until I can see everything's definitely on the move kind of guy. Mm-hmm. I don't want to catch a falling knife, and I think that there's still some downward pressure to go. A lot of people say legalization in Canada will make things boom. I think that's already baked into the prices. So I want to look for things that haven't had a big upward run but have had the downward, like Invictus, Supreme, producers that are undervalued and haven't had the same stigma attached to them as some of the higher flyers.
Right. Jason, crypto?
Yeah, I expect Bitcoin to make a new high by the end of the year, above 20,000. Major catalysts would be ETF approval, institutional money coming in, or one of the big retailers announcing that they are going to accept Bitcoin, an Amazon or a Facebook integration or eBay, something around those lines, I think would send the price significantly higher. But at any rate, I think it's trending higher over time, and I continue to buy during the dips.
David Gold.
Catalyst for the precious metals. Catalyst for the precious metals would be any kind of sovereign wealth or sovereign bond failure. So, I mean, a country like a nation state like the U.S., probably not going to happen soon, or a large corporate bond failure. So anything in the debt markets that significantly cascades to others in that market. In other words, the first domino to fall is significant enough to hit the 2, to hit the 4, to hit the 8, to the 16, 32. So that's what I think will be the catalyst.
Awesome. I've got the red light. So last point that I want from each of you, rapid fire. In one word, tell us who is going to have the best return this year as an asset class, and then where can people connect with you to ask questions and read about your work, Chris?
The best return I've had this year has been in oil and gas so far.
Oh, there you go.
It's basically around Mexico opening up their fields. I think there's short-term money to be made there and some good opportunities. But I'm looking back at blockchain.
Yep.
Specifically blockchain companies that have real-world clients and can walk into a boardroom and plug into their systems.
Yep.
There's not that many of them around at the moment on the Canadian space, but there's a couple that are poking their head out and doing real business. And there's a bunch that are yet to go publicly listed that are just waiting for the opportunity.
Where do you write?
Equity.guru, it's all there.
Jason, quick.
Yeah, probably not a surprise. I think crypto will be the top performer of the three this year, followed closely by cannabis stocks. You can find all my work at goldstockbull.com. We do a monthly newsletter, model portfolio, and trade alerts.
David?
I think it'll be cryptos, and you can find me at themorganreport.com.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate your time this morning. Great panel. Thank you. Give him a hand.